A very warm welcome to all the viewers of Leaders Talk by the CSR Universe. I'm Shweta, I'm the consulting editor of this platform, and I'm joined by Ms. Ruchika Kumar, our editor. In today's episode, we would be discussing a multitude of seemingly unsurmountable challenges that our country is trying to overcome today. I think we'll all agree that India has demonstrated a phenomenal growth in the last 2 decades, not just economically, but also in terms of access to basic education, healthcare, and infrastructural development. Yet, the challenge of the benefits of this growth percolating to the bottom of the economic pyramid remains. Is there a way to have more equitable distribution of resources without compromising the much needed pace of this growth? How can we make sure that public schools are not just promoting literacy, but education in its true sense? Or that every worker in the country has a basic sense of job security? Our guest for today will help us understand these questions better and shed light on possible solutions. His organization is active in the sphere of public policy, and he considers it to be a do tank rather than a think tank. It's a pleasure to be introducing Mr. Tarun Cherukuri, the CEO and co-founder of Indus Action. He started his journey towards social transformation as a Teach for India fellow, after which there was no looking back for him. Tarun is an Obama Foundation fellow, a DRK Foundation entrepreneur, a Fulbright scholar, as well as a Joint Japan World Bank scholar. He is a chemical engineer by qualification and pursued his master's in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School. Thank you so much, Tarun, for joining us today. I'm sure it's going to be an insightful discussion. Thanks. Okay.
Thank you, Shweta, and the CSR Universe team for having me here. Pleasure.
So tell us a little about Indus Action. How did you conceptualize it, and what does it do, and what has it achieved so far? Just give us an insight into that.
Sure, Shweta.
Just a brief about what you do, how you do it.
So Indus Action's mission is to help vulnerable families enable access to legislated rights. The motivation really came for it through my own experience. I taught a group of students as part of the Teach for India Fellowship, and I taught them in grade 3 and 4, and I realized when I kind of started off with them, by grade 3 itself, like most of my students tested a few years behind. So I realized that I was mostly kind of playing a catch up, like in spite of possibly trying to be the best teacher they ever had, they were still 2 years behind. So in math they were at grade 1 level by grade 3, and in the basic English and language acquisition they were at kindergarten level. So I was spending all my time as a teacher, getting them up to their grade level, and not just being able to do higher order stuff. So that's what made me think that something needs to start early, and so that's how I got interested in early childhood education. And the more I studied, then opportunity to intervene at the early childhood education level, I realized that something has to be done at a public policy level. So that's how Indus Action started. I spent 2 years at grad school trying to understand what's the best point of intervention within the Right to Education Act. And I became convinced that, it was a great policy on paper, very progressive. It mandated 25% seats at the early childhood education level at age 3 to 6 for children from the most vulnerable backgrounds to study in some of the best schools. And I was convinced, with my own experience, that this was probably the earliest point that you could start, with a child, and give them a real shot at having a very different life path. The real shot at social mobility, because if you start anytime later, then they're always going to play catch up. And that's how Indus Action started, saying that, okay, 1 million seats are available for the children from the most vulnerable backgrounds to go to some of the best schools in the neighborhood. What better shot, can they be to do this systematically and actually make sure that inclusion happens and social justice happens. So that's how Indus Action started, saying, okay, here is a great policy on paper. How do we translate that and make it a reality and show it in practice? And hence kind of the reference to a do tank. Because India does have a lot of high quality think tanks, which are diagnosing the problems, offering really good public policy solutions. Those get manifested in laws as well. So there is enough civil society, engagement, which translates into government picking this up and making public policy. But once that policy is made and cast in stone and a pen is put on paper, like, we lack both the state capacity and the civic capacity to see that in practice. So our policies are way ahead of our current times and capabilities or the current norms. So that's the space Indus Action wants to occupy. It might not look cool work, or it might not, probably be very appealing. But in the long run, if this is done really well for 2 to 3 decades, we feel that this is the policy that will change the social fabric of this country. So that's how Indus Action started. And very briefly to close this, over the years we realized that even entry at that earliest point is necessary but like insufficient. So children already kind of start on a disadvantage in the first 1,000 days. As we started working with children in Anganwadis at age 3, we realized that they were coming in nutritionally deficient. They were cognitively already, disadvantaged because of the quality of nutrition they received in the first 3 years or first 1,000 days, as we call it. So that prompted kind of us to adapt and pivot and extend our work to food security as well. Make sure that pregnant and lactating mothers got the best support to right to food security. And as we did that work, we realized that, okay, the problem is much deeper. The problem is actually in, patriarchal norms and, female labor force participation. And we have to make sure that, mothers are ready, are financially independent, financially included, before, the family plan and, are able to care for their children in the first 1,000 days. And fathers are an active, participant in the caregiving process as well. So that, naturally took us to livelihood benefits and how do you make sure that, families are not under duress or shock, when they're, going through a family planning or a child, childbirth stage. So that's what Indus Action does. We specifically pick moments that matter in a family's life cycle. And the most vulnerable moments, and around those we have identified specific public policies or entitlements that already exist, and we help bridge the gap between what is the ideal for that policy and what's actually happening on the ground. And then do it.
Okay, I think we lost connection, but what you were saying, Tarun, I mean, it sounds so amazing and so needed, because being a mother myself, I know the value of course, the first 1,000 days that we have talked about, but also the actual thing that you said, which resonated with me, is that the mother should be mentally prepared. She should be financially independent. And she should be a contributing member to her family and a society. That is so important for the well-being of a child. Basically, the parents should be very prepared before bringing a child into this world. So, and if you've actually started working in that direction, it's amazing. Could you tell us in the past 2-3 years, in which directions have you been working, and what do the metrics look like for Indus Action? I'll come to the Samaj 3.5% plan. I also wanted to know about that. But first, tell me, how's the journey been so far?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. So we're in our 10th year of operation. So in the first good part of the first 7 years, we focused on the access to education scholarships. And after having reached a point where we were reflecting almost 500,000 students cumulatively having secured access to scholarships, we started learning about the challenge in early stage nutrition, and then we developed the program around right to food. And over the last 2 years, we've helped almost 200,000 pregnant lactating mothers get access to maternity benefits. And as we did that, COVID happened, and we realized that livelihood shocks are real in families, and if we don't provide livelihood support, that will kind of have a spillover effect on both nutrition outcomes and school retention and learning outcomes. So the last 2 years, we developed a livelihood program under Construction Workers Act for migrant workers who move with families or by themselves to get unemployment benefits or construction worker benefits. So that we have worked with almost 100,000 construction worker families for the last year and a half in a couple of states. So overall, our portfolio now has access to education scholarships, to right to education, access to maternity benefits, to right to food, and access to construction worker benefits under the right to livelihood programs.
Tell us a little. I read about your Samaj 3.5% program. So how does that work? What is the idea behind that, and how does that work?
Yeah. So the core idea is, like I said, you can almost imagine there is a broken bridge between, the ideal of what a policy needs to achieve. So, for example, the maternity benefits every year, like 25 million children are born. So, ideally, like all pregnant and lactating mothers, 25 million of them like need social protection, need care and protection. And at this point, the state is able to target and provide maternity benefits to roughly about 1 million mothers, on time within kind of the time of the pregnancy, and in full, like provide them a month of minimum wages. Whereas in the formal sector, women are able to access at least 6 months of maternity benefits, and that too kind of not with full quality. So usually kind of the 1 month of maternity benefits also don't are not availed on time, or pregnant mothers go through a lot of friction in receiving that. So that's when we realized that we might develop a solution for this on the state side, but eventually, like a lot of citizens need to be active and pursue these entitlements by themselves. So that's when kind of the idea of Samaj program is born. So over the years, we've always worked with community champions. We had different versions of our community champion and community leadership program, because we knew, like Indus Action alone as an organization can't solve any of these three particular rights or three problems. We need to build almost a movement of citizens who care about this, who want to actively participate and solve this problem. So Samaj is our attempt to build a wider coalition of active citizens who all care about the same problem. And the rule is that we know from a lot of literature and studying previous movements. When we think about movements, we think that okay, maybe 51% people might need to be activated, or like more than 25% people in a society need to get activated to move the society on a particular issue. But the research is very interesting. It shows that 3.5 people fight for a progressive norm, shift the norms in a society. So it's kind of the golden rule of organizing, and that's really what inspires us. We're like, okay, we don't need a large crowd. If we can mobilize 3.5% of India's population to care about these fundamental welfare rights, and we can get them activated in some small way. It could be weekend volunteering, it could be 6 months of extended internship or a sabbatical for young professionals. It could be a 1 year of commitment to start with. So start them on their journey. So very much like my experience, like I had a 2-year fellowship which gave me a window to see what is the sector about, what are the challenges, can I play a role long term in this. So our Samaj program is kind of an open platform to invite kind of new problem solvers into the fold, either from within the community or from the society. And then we have a leadership ladder for them. So you start being the champion, and then you can graduate and become a community leader, and then you can become a fully Ambedkar fellow, which is a year-long commitment, and eventually become a partner entrepreneur as well. So we have a clear leadership development trajectory as part of this program. And the end game is obviously, ideally, like with all the rights, like Indus Action should not exist. We pay taxes, we give public monies to government to actually implement these entitlements. So ideally there shouldn't be a mediator or a bridge like Indus Action, connecting the citizen to the state. So in a steady state, we are imagining there are enough citizens, and the state also has enough capacity, so that Indus Action actually becomes redundant in doing kind of the bridge task that we are supposed to do now. Yeah.
What are the geographies in which you're active in? Which states do you work in as of now?
So we're present, right now in 12 states across the country. We operate in 3 broad zones: North, East, and South. And we have anchor states that we do, deeper work in, and then we have satellite states within the zone. So in North, it's Delhi and Haryana that are the anchor states. We do a lot of core work in. In East, Chhattisgarh and Odisha are anchor states, and in South, Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. And so these are 6 core states where we have teams, and we do multiple projects, and then we have satellite states where we have a single project that we're replicating. Yeah.
Okay, Okay, Ruchika had a question. She has a bad connection, so she's just sent the question. What kind of do you have to provide any kind of train, because you work in multiple states and you work with the actually the bottom of the pyramid? So, what kind of training do you have to give to your people? Say training in local languages or the dialect.
Yeah.
So, how do they go about it? Because you must be
Yeah.
having very
A
young
great
people,
question.
probably straight out of college, coming to you. So, how do you
Yeah,
train
yeah,
them?
yeah. Yeah, no, great question, Ruchika. So one, we try and solve this, one at a structural level, like in terms of recruitment, like we believe in the idea of proximate leadership. So, we try and, recruit, local leadership. So, like, whether it's, Lalita, who's based in Andhra Pradesh and from Andhra Pradesh has had kind of the international experience, but is locally rooted. Anjan is, born and brought up in Delhi, but also, has worked in many international organizations and, proximately rooted. So as much as possible, like all our teams are very, proximately rooted. They're either, born and brought up in the same state, but have had kind of the benefit of, exposure and international experience, and now they want to serve in their local context. So usually, kind of, they are proficient in the state language, whether it's Telugu in Telugu-speaking states or Tamil in Tamil-speaking states. Of course, some backbone roles do not require, like if it's a technology role, like you need to be proficient less in kind of the local language and more in kind of a specific skill. Agnostic about how we do. So that's number one at a level one. We try and kind of recruit as proximately as possible. And our Samaj program also helps, because our Samaj program is really a bottom-up civic leadership program. So a lot of our community leaders are even more proximately rooted. They know the local dialect, they know the local social and political norms. So they give us a lot of input on what will work and what will not work in terms of our product design, in terms of our local communication collateral, what are the channels we pursue communication, etc. So these are two design level ways in which we solve. In terms of how we train and upskill, like uh, we have like an ongoing talent development program for the entire team. So everybody has a personalized kind of learning and development plan, and we also have a calendar of activity for the entire team. So we think in some ways like sports teams. So it's like almost you have to do the daily practice to build your muscle memory, to skill and your fitness. So in that sense, like we almost have some kind of daily activity build skill, mastery, and proficiency. So the way this translates into organizational rituals is, whether it's the group trainings that we have on both culture and specific kind of technical proficiencies, or ongoing learning and development opportunities we provide, very contextualized for different members in the team. And then once every 6 months we have ecosystem exposure as well, whether it's conferences, learning programs, etc. Step backs internally. So yeah, there's a very intentional program to make sure that each and every team member has a learning and development trajectory, and they are growing into the next phase of leadership or the next line of leadership. Uh, and the downside of this is, Indus Action has graduated a lot of entrepreneurs into the ecosystem, so which is a good metric, but also it shows that our learning and development program is working well. So in the first 10 years, we've almost had like 10 entrepreneurs come through the rank, entrepreneurs, CEOs come through the ranks. So we tend to lose them to the ecosystem, either at a government level or them running their own non-profits which are very successful. But yeah, we feel like it's a good outcome. In the short term, it's a loss for Indus Action. But as an ecosystem, we're proud that something is working in terms of how we develop our people. Yeah.
Okay, Tarun, when I was actually in talks with your team to set up this interview, they had shared many talk points, and one of them in particular caught my attention. That was about the creation of safety nets, social security, probably it was mentioned. So, what I wanted to ask you, given your exposure, I mean, you work so extensively, that is it possible for a country like India? We have limited resources that are anyway spread very thinly. So, is it possible? Is it feasible for a country like India to have say universal social security, and how can we do that?
Yeah, no, great question, Sweta. It's a question that has kind of, I guess, both troubled and inspired me over the years. So, why is India so poor? Like, do we have kind of, adequate resources to, provide a safety net to everyone? And, so I'll kind of, the short answer is yes and no. The yes part of the answer is, you know, uh, as a, if you said like, if you had a magic wand, can we eliminate poverty and ensure universal basic income to everybody in India, every citizen in India? Like, it can actually happen by tomorrow, right? So, and why do I say that? Let's say if we did the math, if we had to provide basic income by a direct benefit transfer by tomorrow to every Indian and lift them out of poverty, the math is for that is about 13 lakh crores, right? So the question is like, in kind of India's current economy size and kind of tax base, can we generate 13 lakh crores? The short answer is actually yes, right? So there are real, tactical ways, whether it's, progressive taxation through, you can look at two smart things like inheritance tax or, other forms of progressive tax, which can tomorrow generate 13 lakh crores. But the question is like, do we have the political will to actually execute progressive tax, which will provide us 13 lakh crores, which can immediately be transferred to the bottom billion, which will immediately give them a safety net. So that is the no part of the answer. I think like, this is where social norms, come into play, justice norms come into play. Have we evolved as a society in terms of our egalitarianism? Where we have 1.4 billion people, and if a billion people are in poverty trap, do we consider them as part of our family? It's almost like I keep thinking that there's a 7-member family and 5 family members are in poverty trap. 2 have made it. Is it incumbent on the 2 to lift the other 5 up, right? So the answer for me is a clear yes, but obviously at a societal level it doesn't aggregate and happen. And that's really the problem we're trying to solve, like awaken at least the consciousness for 3.5% people. And societies eventually get there. If you look at Scandinavia, like a lot of Western economies, as per capita income improve, safety nets become robust and more strong as well. So like, I think in the medium run, India will definitely become a middle income country, a $5 trillion economy. We'll have a lot more tax base to support our most vulnerable people with more robust safety nets. But in the interim, yes, just like we've seen in COVID, like a lot of people will go up and down, because of poverty shocks and because of lack of formal jobs, and hence the need to, improve the access to these, safety nets and social protection. Uh, so yeah, but I'm very hopeful that the norms will change and we will become more just and more egalitarian, and there'll be more demand. And I do see that demand definitely coming through. And if you see a lot of promises that this parties do make in their manifesto, it's very oriented towards providing safety nets. So and of course there's a lot of active debate. I don't like the term, but there's definitely a lot of active debate on like are these the right amount of entitlements to give, and are we doing too much of freebies, etc. So it is the right debate to have, but I don't like the framing around freebies, because when corporate gets freebies, they're called incentives. But when people, especially the most vulnerable people, get
Yes.
incentives, they're unfortunately called freebies. Uh, so yeah, the short answer is yes, it can be done. But the long answer is that it requires a coalition, a broader coalition of support for wealth distribution in India, which we don't have, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah.
There was also, you just mentioned about in livelihood, right? You also work in that area. And there was also a point that was mentioned about securing the rights of informal workers, because now, especially after COVID, we have we always had more informal workers, and now the percentage is only growing. And probably that is the sector that we should look at when it comes to livelihood, because it's very difficult to create formal structural employment for so many people. So how can we probably relate this sector and ensure that the informal workers also have at least bare minimum rights and a bare
Yeah.
minimum level of security, job security?
Yeah. No, it's definitely 90% of our economy, like give and take, like plus minus 5%, is in the informal sector. And like I said, even in terms of pregnant lactating mothers as well, like out of the 25 million children being born, a large majority of the mothers are in the informal sector. And I feel like it's not just the responsibility of government has the primary responsibility, but corporations and companies can play like a huge role and instead of transferring the responsibility either to the family as a state. So I do feel like it's the combined responsibility of the state, corporations, for example, construction companies. So mostly work through subcontractors, right? So contractors and subcontractors who actually manage the payroll of the daily wage workers. And so in that sense, like big corporations, big construction companies, or the big four or big five, are typically two steps away from their construction cadre or their frontline workers. So I do feel like they have a lot of negotiating ability to influence the contractor companies and subcontractors to have more fair and equitable policies and norms, like almost kind of by a fiat impose a certain set of social security commitments if they can't directly execute it. Just a simple one, under the Construction Workers Act, the state has collected 30,000 crores over the last 25 years for the benefit of actually collected 40,000 crores and 30,000 crores remains unspent in most of the states. Now, here is where companies can really collaborate with governments and say, like, look, I will make sure that I am building a registry of all the construction workers. So, and I will make sure that this data is then automatically uploaded onto the construction workers website, so that the government, I am giving you the promise that these are validated construction workers with me. The government struggles to execute these benefits because they go around, try to register construction workers, put up a very difficult process. They try to validate if they're really construction workers. So what if companies also took a fair share of that load and said, like, look, let me take the pain of validating all the construction workers on my site, which is an easy thing to do for a company, right? And they don't need to partake any money of theirs in actually giving the benefit, because the government has already collected the cess to provide that benefit. So this is one tactical and easy way in which companies can play a role, civil society can play a role. They can mediate this process, maybe kind of make sure that the registries that the companies are maintaining are fair, transparent, actually include all the workers, includes norms like there are crashes at construction sites so that women are included as well in the registry. They get access to maternity benefits, etc. And then government can use that to then efficiently transfer the benefits, which is it's already collected. So yeah, it's quite a sacrilege that 30,000 crores is lying in an escrow account. We almost have 40-50 million construction workers and their families not being able to access these 30,000 crores. So this is one easy fix that I see, where all of us can get involved and make sure that the monies which are already collected reach kind of the people who are building our cities, and who are taking great risks to give up on their village land and village work, come all the way to the cities and construct like all of our cities, and really construct India in many ways, build our highways, build our cities, build up parks, etc., and that we're not able to offer basic protection to them. Yeah.
Okay.
I hope that fully responded to the question you had in mind.
It does. Actually, what was coming to my mind, it was not directly associated with it, but when it comes to informal workers, there are many regulations that the government keeps on passing, say the minimum wages that we have. I think they differ for all states. And we have minimum working hours. So right now I heard of a legislation about minimum working hours. So, which is about you can have a 4-day work week, but you have to give a minimum of 12 hours each day. Do you think that these are realistic, probably expectations, especially when it comes to, say, people who are doing physical work, construction workers and all? In your opinion, does it? What was the rationale behind having such, say, increased level of work hours, and minimum wage is also probably not at par or of what is required? I'm familiar with the UP where I live, but I'm sure it's not very high in any state. So what do you think is the rationale for the government to have, they can set a slightly higher minimum wage? Would that change the scenario? Or would that probably just push the companies to find a way around the system? What has your experience been like?
Correct. So yeah, no, it's a great question. So I think increasing the baseline minimum wages will kind of affect the labor market in the sense the reason like there's a low bar right now is we have uh, an excessive labor supply and obviously excessive labor supply and hence
We
kind
do,
of
yes.
the wages kind of uh, you know getting matched at a low level, and if the government artificially raises the bar, then companies unfortunately will obviously respond to market dynamics. So they will either kind of move to a state where the labor code regime is more lenient and more flexible, and so that's the experience. Like without naming particular states, like a lot of internal migration has happened from tighter regime states to kind of laissez-faire labor regulation states, and so that is a risk then states run, like in terms of losing their own talent to neighboring states, etc. So hence, like states are also uh, risk averse and nervous about uh, you know uh, it's a technical solution to which like to a deeper problem, which is basically like we don't have enough supply of high quality jobs to almost 2 crore young people who are entering the workforce every year. So ideally, like 2 crore young people who are in their 20s are entering the workforce every year. To match that kind of demographic dividend and potential, so we need to have a system like an economic and kind of job growth system which is generating 2 crore equivalent job. Unfortunately, that isn't there. So hence we have an excess of labor supply, and both at the blue collar level and white collar level, and we don't have enough matching high quality jobs, and hence uh, the price matching becomes, or the wage matching becomes inequitable, and obviously people who have less power, they cannot kind of negotiate in the best wages for themselves, and that's where the government can step in to regulate that, but any significant over regulation will mean that the market will respond by circumventing it. So it is a complex challenge, and I feel like the root cause is definitely the jobs environment, and like there I think government could do a lot more to make build a more enabling environment, whether it's improve uh, you know uh, a more predictable kind of law and order or rule of law, improve kind of health and education public system facilities so that workforce come out with higher quality skills, etc., provide more on the job skilling opportunities. So these are 3 4 where there's a significant lag in state capacity, which then reflects in kind of the readiness of the workforce, and kind of the kind of job growth or the ability to be entrepreneurial and start enterprises. So yeah, unless we solve that kind of root problem, I feel like labor code regulation will be a kind of technical fix or short-term fix, which might not solve the market dynamics. Um, and Kerala is a great example, right? So we do have like a archetypical state, and the bulk of Kerala's economy is run on remittances, right? So we've had kind of labor flight over the years, uh, because of this tension between labor codes and kind of the market or growth environment, growth enabling environment within the city, within the state, and hence a lot of people, in spite of having really good health and education and human development access, decide to take flight and find jobs outside the country. Yeah.
Okay. Tarun, I think we are almost, we have exceeded the time limit, but I'd still like to add one more question, rather an open-ended one more time, because I rarely get to ask these questions, these big ticket items. So just I'd like to end with this question that now that we are the most populated country in the world, we have there are 1.4 billion of us. So how do you personally view this development? I mean, do you think, and what can we do basically to make this count, to make this huge pool of manpower and mind power count? So basically your top 3 suggestions, and this is a purely personal opinion question. I just want to know your take on it. Do you see this as something that we can look forward to, or do you see this as a huge responsibility? How do you view this?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it is a demographic dividend for now. At least for the next 15, 20 years, India will have, relative to a lot of, advanced economies, the best kind of, I guess, the largest, share of working population. And so in that sense, we have more hands on the deck, minds on the problems, and boots on the ground in all ways. Like, that's the advantage, but it's an advantage only if, like, all of the young human capital has the right set of skills, is empowered with health, education, etc. So yeah, number one would be really invest in public goods like health and education to grow this space. Second is to really invest in skills as well, skilling programs, skilling universities, much like Germany, like, have good public health education systems, but also have, like, really good higher education systems. So people who don't make it to universities, like having skilling universities to have alternative vocational pathways as well. So these are, definitely, my top two, so that uh, this demographic division doesn't, become a, demographic, liability for us as a country. And my number three would definitely be, like, if as we generate more tax revenues, get closer and closer to, delivering a universal basic income. So I have, like, great confidence in kind of the enterprising spirit in India. So I think if you assure people like a baseline safety net, so I feel like we have a lot of creativity, entrepreneurship capability for people to privately take risks and achieve their needs, and pursue their dreams. If we can really alleviate people out of those traps with a universal basic income, that would be my third thing. So yeah, health, education, skills, and kind of basic income. So if we can get this done, I think we will not just be a middle income country, but we'll be a thriving middle income country. A true market democracy, and a good example for a shining example for the rest of the world as well.
I couldn't agree more with you on all the 3 points, and I'm sure all of the people here would agree. So, Tarun, thank you so much for joining us today, and it was indeed a very insightful discussion. I was actually looking forward to it, and I'm glad that we had this.
Thank you, Shweta and Ruchika. Thank you for the thoughtful questions. I enjoyed the conversation as well. Yeah.